All right. Deontay Wilder puts everything in Tyson Fury's court, forces him to, watch this, contractually obligated dispute resolution process. And this whole time, Tyson Fury's acting like the whole thing expired and he can walk away. We'll see if he don't show up to that hearing. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel, dog. You gotta love contracts sometimes, okay? Deontay Wilder forces Tyson Fury's hands and pushes him into a contractually obligated dispute resolution process. Now, before I get into the video, of course, I'm going to have to explain to you what that is, okay? It is in two parts, but background first. Tyson Fury pulled out of the Deontay Wilder fight, claiming that the contract has expired and that he was going to go on and fight somebody else, right? We'll leave all of the Glovegate stuff out of it. We'll leave all of the cheating stuff out of this video, even though, let me tell you, he cheated. Now, having said that he cheated, let's go over what just came out. Tyson Fury tries to pull out of the fight. Deontay Wilder says, I have a rematch clause. Tyson Fury says, no, you do not have a rematch clause. It expired. But in the contract, there is not a one-step, but a two-step arbitration, mediation, and arbitration provision in their agreement. And that's huge. And why is that huge? Well, first, what is mediation? Mediation is where an independent person, in this case a retired judge, sits you down and tries to work out the problem. Okay, Tyson, you say the contract expired because this fight didn't happen soon enough for you. Deontay, you say that the guy cheated or whatever, blah, blah, blah. No, you're saying that I keep coming back to cheating because I do think cheating is going to come up in this. But so they got their issues. The mediator says, okay, let's work together and try to solve this problem. And they agreed in the contract to do that. So what does that mean? That means you can't just walk away. You have to get in front of that mediator. You have to look at each other in the face and try to come to an agreement. And Tyson Fury agreed to that. So why would Tyson Fury ever have thought that he could just say the contract expired and walk away into Never Never Land? Never to see Deontay Wilder again, when that contract said that if we have an issue, we will go to a mediator and we will try to first work it out amongst ourselves. Tyson Fury didn't want to do that. Tyson Fury just wanted to leave it. So what is the second step in the after the mediation process? After you say, we have honestly tried to work things out with one another and we cannot come to any type of conclusion, then you go to arbitration, a binding arbitration. Now, I've had this conversation with people before explaining what arbitration is, but this one is slightly different than the one in the Andre Ward's case, and it's different than the one, what was the other arbitration? It's also different than the one with Canelo Alvarez, because this is a mediation and arbitration, not just an arbitration. You're not just taking the facts, sitting in front of a panel of who? Nevada State Athletic Commission commissioners that are not lawyers, that are not judges, that do not have a basic understanding of contract law or any of that. They just say, ooh, I think you're right. We like this guy, not you, get out. In this case, Deontay Wilder's team, from what I can see, was smart. And Tyson Fury's team was smart. They put together a two-step process where it's like, nah, we're not going to go straight to, having somebody decide who wins and what the damages are going to be. We're going to go through a process where we try to work together with each other first. And if that is what they agreed to, then why is Bob Arum and why is Tyson Fury running around talking about the contract expired? They don't know what they're doing. I haven't heard from them, all of this nonsense. Because if they would have had any type of issue right? Where Deontay Wilder's not responding and they feel like he's going to breach. They don't know if he's going to take the fight or not. They could have called the mediator and said, hey, man, we have an anticipatory breach of contract here. We need to start this dispute resolution process that we agreed to. They could have done that, but they didn't do that. They went to just try to walk away. The fact now, notice, I have not gotten into who do I think is going to win and this and that. I'll talk about that in just a second, what I think could be an outcome that would happen in mediation and not arbitration. But let me just get to this. This is what I think a chance is how this could play out. In mediation, right, what would Tyson Fury say is his issue? Is he going to say, well, my issue is that Deontay Wilder said all of these things about me and I feel like he defamed my character. So now I want out of the contract. I don't want to fight him anymore. My feelings are hurt. Do you think that is going to fly with a judge? The judge will then say, hey, if you feel like that is the case, then you need to go find redress for that. If you don't actually charge him with defamation, if you're not actually accusing him of that, how can I enter that into my consideration about this fight if you've not actually accused him of doing it, right? Because people talk smack in fights all the time. They've called Deontay Wilder literally a bum. Is he supposed to say, oh, you called me a bum and I know that that I'm not a bum? I know I fought top 10 guys and you're lying on me in the media. Does that mean he gets out of his contractual obligations? No. It does not, more than likely. So they're going to have to sit there and explain to each other why they don't think that fight should happen. And then they're going to have to explain themselves through the coronavirus. They're going to have to look there to a retired judge and explain to him and have him believe that the reason why that they cannot make this fight is because of the coronavirus. Is because of Deontay Wilder and not because of the coronavirus. That all these postponements didn't happen because of the coronavirus. And if you listen to what Shelly Finkel said, we feel extremely confident going into this. I know that they do feel confident because Tyson Fury, according to his own words, agreed to every extension that there was. He said it himself. He agreed to the December 19th date. But then he's going to say in October, no, I'm pulling it out. I'm pulling out of it because I want to fight on December 5th instead of December 19th. And you think that 2-week difference is going to be, what is that? Of course, Shelly Finkel is going to feel confident going into that type of scenario where he's claiming a breach of contract that the contract expired when Tyson Fury's team was the one extending it. Because what Deontay Wilder said is, look, I don't need to have a crowd. Now, just imagine how that goes into mediation. Deontay Wilder's team is sitting there saying, look, man, we'll fight on any date. Our client doesn't care. Our client doesn't need a crowd. They need a crowd, right? Deontay Wilder's saying on the interview with 78, he said it on interviews with Blue Blood. He said it multiple times. He said, I don't care about fighting in front of a crowd. That's Tyson Fury that wants to fight in front of the crowd. So Tyson Fury saying he doesn't want the fight. He can't take the fight now because there's not a crowd. That's on him. There's nowhere in our agreement that says a crowd has to be there. You know what I mean? He could just make up anything and pull out of the fight. He only wants to fight in a dome that doesn't have a roof, right? Now that's obviously because you could say that a fan being there is a material term, or a material consideration. I'm not quite sure how they would phrase that, but you get my point. Anyway, at the end of it is this. You guys are running around here acting like Tyson Fury can do whatever he wants and he has nobody to answer to. How Deontay Wilder's team is just they're sitting around not doing anything, and how could they not see this and that? Well, obviously they saw enough to force, and this is what I said about arbitration clause and mediation clauses. I didn't say it about mediation clauses, and actually, I love the fact that they slapped the mediation clause on before the arbitration clause, because I'm like, okay, yeah, that really works. Because at least now you have a judge that is trying to figure out who's being reasonable, right? Now, here's the risk for Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder when they're not being reasonable in the mediation, is that the guy who's doing the arbitration is also the guy that's doing the mediation. So the guy in the mediation, if he sees that you're really not cooperating and one guy is trying to make it work and the other person is really not trying to make it work, it's very reasonable or to expect that could be actually that recognition could reflect itself in the actual binding by binding arbitration. That means, dude, that it can be enforced by law, right? So when this judge says, no, Tyson Fury, you have to fight him. Tyson Fury cannot just go and if the guy says, hey, Deontay Wilder, sorry, the guy is off, because it could go either way. It could go either way because this is now, it's in somebody's hands. And it's going to be depending on what his values are, how he reads the circumstances, how he reads the interpretation of them, and it's going to be binding. But at least it's not just a one-step process where it's just he looks at it on the papers, he looks at the paperwork, and boom, he makes his decision. He's actually going to sit down and work with the parties involved to see if they can come to a conclusion. And this is the conclusion that I think that they're going to come to. They're more than likely going to allow Tyson Fury to fight somebody else, right? Deontay Wilder to fight somebody else, and then for Tyson Fury to have to fight Deontay Wilder after that fight, right? I don't know what that's going to mean for the WBC, how that's going to mean with belts or whatever. If Tyson Fury just decides he's going to drop a belt, all of those type of things are going to have to be considered. And that's why, dude, the likelihood of this guy fighting on December 5th, dude, just got a lot slimmer, okay? Because he's now in negotiation. We'll see. Anyway, we'll see how it plays out. But just want to let people know that that is what the scenario is. It's a mediation. It's a mediation. Then it's an arbitration. Deontay Wilder exercised his rights. So now he is going to try to enforce that rematch clause. And we'll see what comes out of it. But anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.